Well, today we have Fred Daggett, and Fred is going to introduce us to a 1981 International, and I guess this would be called an Emeryville, wouldn't it?
Not this one anymore. They switched to the TranStar, out of the TranStar to the true flat front cabover. It's got a 6 V92 Detroit in it, 9-speed transmission. Lloyd Dretch also is the first guy that drove this truck and put probably 500,000 miles on it. Lloyd drove 4 million miles for us over his career, so most of these trucks Lloyd spent a lot of time in. But it was a great tractor in its day, a bigger sleeper, a lot more comfortable cab. Quite a truck in its day, probably at 300, 325 horsepower, which in its day was a big truck. Now, of course, they're much bigger.
What was really the optimum speed then to be driving this down the road?
You know, I'd say at 58 to 62 miles an hour they could go.
Were they governed at all, or was that just what?
We've always had a governor on our trucks. We've always tried to control them in that 60s range,
Very
65, 70. But they really couldn't go that. Of course, loaded and empty were two different speeds too.
Right. Now, how many miles are on this particular
You know,
truck?
this one also has close to 1 million miles on it also. We retired it several years ago. We've just kept it around for nostalgic reasons.
When you talk about 1 million miles, now that's on the chassis or on the running gear or the engine, or what is
Well,
it?
the chassis. The new trucks, we can get 1 million miles out of the engine. Back here, they were probably being restored in that 400,000 to 500,000 range, and now that was stretched then to 600,000 to 800,000, and now it's not uncommon to get 1 million on them.
Now, when you say restored, do they use a glider kit now on some of these? Or?
Glider kits are coming back. For years they didn't have them. We have restored some glider kits. We haven't done that for years though.
And in the glider kit, you keep the same cabs, you keep the same differentials?
The glider kit is the chassis of it, and we just put the engine and the transmission, the driveline in it.
Okay.
So
Very
a good way to do it for years.
Right.
Good truck, a lot shorter wheelbase than the new ones, so the ride was probably a little bit rougher.
But now you're going to a longer wheelbase, and of course the short cab was the idea when the trailer length was limited, wasn't it?
Sure, yes. You know, great maneuverability with it. The cabover, you can turn a lot sharper, get up closer to things. So for the livestock days, it was a great tractor because the farmer's yards were smaller and it was easy to get around.
Well, Fred, we want to thank you again for
Absolutely.
showing this.
Absolutely.